What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves? Physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, you know, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, well, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them? Visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies. Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS.
The comments and views expressed on The More Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The More Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Broadcasting from the UK and across the world online. You're now watching the UK's only alternative late night talk show, and I'm your host, Kevin Moore. For the next hour, I'll be covering subjects that will open up your mind and provide you with information you may have never heard before. On today's show, I'm joined with Kathleen Marden. Now, Kathleen earned her BA in social work at the University of New Hampshire in 1971. She began her professional career as a social worker and eventually entered the field of education as a teacher. Later, she was promoted to a supervisory position, coordinating educational programs and supervising education staff. She left her job in the 1990s to pursue a career as a UFO investigator and researcher. Kathleen Marden, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
Thank you very much for coming on today. I really appreciate you giving us this time, because I know I changed the goalpost and it was supposed to be later on today, but I really appreciate you just being flexible and working with us. Thank you for that.
Yes, the morning is a very good time for me, and it's morning here in Florida.
Of course, Florida. Yes, that's where you're based. And our hearts do go out to you with what happened in Orlando over the weekend as well.
Oh, thank you. That was such a tragedy.
Absolutely terrible.
It has affected everybody in the United States, and particularly those who live in this area.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Orlando is such a peaceful community, isn't it, as well, in general?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It's a lovely place, and we have tourists who come from all over the world to go to Disney and to the other attractions that are in this area. So this was particularly horrific.
Absolutely.
But it is safe now, so I don't want anyone to cancel their plans.
No. Well, I'll be coming over to Florida in December, most definitely. And it just goes to show where our consciousness is right now. And I wonder if that's one of the reasons why mass contact has not taken place, in a sense. Because unless our consciousness is raised to a level that equals to theirs, then they're not going to, show themselves en masse, because we are just not ready.
I totally agree with you. I suspect that is the reason that they have not made overt contact. It is a reason for them to be very concerned about human behavior. when you think about it, when you look at the statistics, during the 20th century alone, we killed nearly 200 million of our own kind in major and minor wars. What does that say about human behavior? Imagine if we were to go to another planet that had life and had civilized life. What would our opinion be? How would we behave if we observed the inhabitants of that planet engaging in tribal warfare, in killing each other on a regular basis, on allowing the children of that planet to starve to death, to be murdered, to be eaten to death, or beaten to death, to be starved? It does not speak well for this planet. And when you look at the materialism in this planet, the greed that is rewarded, it seems that our values are entirely misplaced. And I do believe that they are attempting to bring about a higher level of consciousness in humans.
I completely agree with you, but isn't it a great place for a soul to come to have experience?
Yes, it is. And, we have a beautiful planet, and we have the majority of individuals, I believe, are good people. They care about their families, they care about their neighbors, they come together as a community. But then there are others who, unfortunately, are really an aberration in a sense, but who somehow, probably through their aggression, through their greed, through their intolerance, rise to the top and dominate what we see and probably what our extraterrestrial visitors see.
Yes, absolutely. I completely agree. And so many would agree with you. So many other researchers are going in that direction of just what you've said there as well. And it seems to be the case. Now, you come from an exceptional, exciting background and story. Before we get into that as well, it's difficult for me to ask you, did you ever have any interest in ufology? Because of obviously of your aunt and uncle. Just tell the audience about your aunt and uncle and how that from going from then a social worker into this sort of second job that you've got now as a UFO investigator.
Yes, I'd be happy to. Actually, I was 13 years old when my aunt and uncle, Betty and Barney Hill, took a weekend vacation. It was a long weekend to Niagara Falls and then over to Montreal. And they were returning home through the White Mountains on the evening of September 19, 1961, when they had a close encounter with a UFO. My family had essentially no prior interest in UFOs, except for in 1957, 1958, my mother was out grocery shopping on a Friday night. She was driving along and she saw a very strange sight. It looked like a large blimp. We later decided it was a mothership with smaller craft, just sort of flying around it, right around it, and then entering it. It was a sighting that other people observed as well. It was in a populated area. Other people came out of their home and watched it with my mother. I didn't even know about this until September 20th, 1961, when my mother told me for the first time. And that was after my Aunt Betty, who was my mother's older sister, called to tell my mother that she and my uncle had seen they called it a flying saucer the night before, close up, so close up that my uncle saw figures looking back at him, and this frightened him terribly. And that sort of sparked my interest. I've been very interested in this ever since that occurred, but it was probably the late 1980s, maybe around 1988, when I decided it was time to change my career. I started out in social work, then I was an educator, but I was fascinated with this story. I wanted to research it to find out if I thought it was true. I wanted to investigate all of it. I believed that in Betty's and Barney's credibility, in their honesty. What I didn't know was if this was some kind of mistake. Maybe Betty had a series of dreams that Barney absorbed. Maybe they were simply mistaken. I knew that they had a close encounter. They were wide awake when this occurred. I knew that Barney had seen figures that were dressed in black, shiny uniforms that he said were somehow not human. But the rest of it, was there really an abduction? That's what I wanted to know. So that's what brought me to this fascinating story. And I spent the next 15 to 20 years researching it. I wrote the book Captured, the Betty and Barney Hill UFO Experience, and Stanton Friedman contributed a couple of chapters to this book. He is a nuclear physicist, retired, and he was one of the first individuals to bring about an investigation of the star map and to find individual scientists who would vet the work of Marjorie Fish, who was a well-educated woman who investigated a star map that Betty said that she had observed on this craft after her physical examination, and that Dr. Simon, the psychiatrist who had worked with Betty and Barney over a period of 6 months, had suggested to Betty that she could draw this if she could remember it accurately and if it didn't trouble her too much. So she did sketch this star map, and this brilliant woman, Marjorie Fish, investigated this, constructed 23 models using monofilament line before and a frame before she was actually able to find a match. It was an extraordinary amount of work that she did. She went to the university. She had to take out astronomical catalogs. She had to record all of the distance data by hand. Then she had to take that information home. She had to do the math to know exactly where to place every one of these stars in their proper location. It was an extraordinary piece of work for that in that time frame, which was in the late 60s and early 1970s when she was doing this work. She did find a match eventually, and she believed that these beings had come here from the Zeta Reticuli star system. That is the net, which is about 38, 39 light years away from us.
Yes. We had someone on yesterday in regards to the story Project Serpo, and they were from Zeta Reticuli as well. This exchange program that took place due to the crash at Roswell being the pinnacle point for that to happen.
Yes.
Incredible stuff. And you've preserved this family event by documenting for future generations this wonderful book Captured as well. How does the family take the story now? Is it still of great interest to the family? Is it just one of those events that happened in the family that people don't talk about as much? Or, I mean, how does that work?
It is of great interest to certain members of the family. Like anyone else in society, other members of the family just go about their normal everyday life. But if I see them and I mention it, then they absolutely believe that it is true. They absolutely believe that it did happen. They knew Betty's and Barney's credibility. They knew that they were upstanding members of the community and that they were both psychologically healthy and strong individuals.
Absolutely. Now, the star map, was that brought through under regression, or was it just due to the nature of Betty's, high IQ, she was able to remember?
This was brought out under hypnotic regression. She and Barney, as I stated, had 6 months worth of sessions with Dr. Benjamin Simon. He was a renowned psychiatrist. They were referred to him by another psychiatrist because he used deep trance hypnosis in order to resolve psychosomatic problems that soldiers experienced when they were returning home from World War II. Many of them might have been blinded, they might have been unable to walk, but their condition was psychological rather than physiological. My uncle Barney had suffered these kinds of psychosomatic symptoms as a result of observing these non-human entities, having conscious recall for that, and being traumatized greatly by that. Also realizing that there was 2 hours missing time and that there was physical evidence that they couldn't account for. This really aided him. He ended up developing ulcers, bleeding ulcers. He had to take a leave of absence from work, and he really needed to see someone who could help to resolve these issues that he had around this missing time. So Dr. Simon was the very best person in the Boston area that he could possibly see, and he helped him a great deal as they individually relived their experience, uncovered the memories of what happened, not only the memories that they did consciously recall, but the memories of what occurred during these 2 hours of missing time.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, you can't imagine, can you, really, what that would have done to their psyche to be in contact, to first contact with these beings, these highly intelligent, benevolent beings, and you know that it's a life-changing experience, even though their memory was repressed. They were repressed in the sense that when they left the craft, they were under some form of hypnosis or whatever these Zeta Reticuli creatures use or species use to forget the events of those 2 hours.
Yes, absolutely. And Betty, as she was being escorted from the craft, she went down later than Barney because she saw script in sort of a tablet on the craft. It was symbols, and there were rows of symbols. And she wanted that as proof that that experience had happened. And that person that she called the leader, that we know now is an escort that takes individuals throughout their lifetime, said to her that she could have that book, that tablet. And so she was leaving the craft, carrying it in her hand, and the smaller ones that that we know now are the guards and the assistants who won't let you off the craft with anything that belongs to them, took that away from her. She was furious. She was arguing that she wanted that. That was her proof that this happened. He took it away from her, but they had escorted Barney to the car first, and then he saw her coming down the trail later when she was being escorted through this path, through the woods by the leader. She said to him, "I'm just an average person, and I don't know a lot about science, but I would be able to help you to speak with men of science. And if you would allow me to do this, I'll try to arrange it." And he said to her, "It's not my decision, but perhaps that will happen in the future." And she said, "But how will you find me?" And he said to her, "We can always find those that we want to find." You know, this indicated to me that this had been done before, that Betty and Barney were not the first, and that, we have to think the craft was set up. The craft was set up already with 2 examining rooms at least. Betty and Barney were taken to separate examining rooms. The craft was set up so that a needle could be inserted into Betty's navel. Now, why was that done? Perhaps it was to remove ova. We know now about the genetic experiments that are being done with experiences. We know now that hybrid beings are being produced, are being gestated in artificial gestational tanks on board maybe craft in some kind of alien environment. We suspect now that this program is to upgrade humans. We don't know that for sure. Some people think they want to take us over, that they're producing these so that they can insert their own consciousness into humans and in human-looking containers, and they want to take over the planet. I don't think that they have that kind of aggressive agenda. I think that they're here to help us. I think that they're here to raise our spiritual consciousness to the point where there can be a greater sense of integration and communication with humans. I think they're also concerned that we might take our brand of friendship and hostility out into their environment, into their neighborhood, and certainly that would not be good news for them. So I think there are probably many agendas that they have. But they did take ova from Betty, I believe. They did take semen from Barney. We know the reason why today. And in addition to that, they were very interested in the human skeletal structure, in the way we were jointed, in our bones, in their hands, in Betty's and Barney's feet. They were very interested in determining the differences between human beings and themselves. And that's what Betty and Barney thought from the very beginning.
Amazing, isn't it? It's almost like they're on a mission to try to discover their true nature of their soul, in a sense. They're almost like they're looking at other soul containers, as in the human body, and trying to figure out how almost a bigger picture. I'm stumbling on my words here because it's so difficult to put into words. Trying to figure out a bigger picture on the nature of reality. They're not here for to collect gold or for monetary reasons. It's something else. It could also be nothing of what I've just said. It could be that they've got a past life connection with Betty and Barney. Why choose these two out of all the people they could have chosen? Was there a spiritual connection between those on the craft and Betty and Barney?
Well, theoretically today, we speculate that there might have been. We have new information that has come forth recently about a dual soul connection, that perhaps an agreement was made prior to their lifetime, and that in a sense that Betty and Barney were family, that Betty and Barney shared a dual soul connection with these beings. That is speculation.
That is.
None of us knows for certain. Certainly Betty and Barney didn't think so. They thought that it was an opportunistic abduction, that it was the first and only abduction that they had. I disagree.
Yep.
With that, based upon my knowledge and my knowledge of encounters that Betty had after that she wanted to deny, although the evidence was there.
Very, very interesting when you look at it from this different perspective, isn't it? When we take away the nuts and bolts and you go into areas that have no evidence in a sense, yet there is this potential bigger picture where I know there's speculation, but there may be a much bigger reason to the whole UFO phenomena when looked upon with this perspective. I mean, if they, whoever they are, have less of a veil, where they remember their true nature more than we do, I wonder what they do know, or whether because of the eons they've been around more than us, their souls have developed in different ways, and potentially again bigger connection back to source, and they're on a different mission to what we are. And again, maybe there's multiple reasons here, and they're also looking after what they seeded.
Yes, that is quite possible, that they seeded us here. Certainly, if we go back throughout history, we see evidence that they have been here from time to time, that they might have changed the human genome before, and they might come back from time to time to see how their experiment is progressing, and that they might be here because they think that we need tweaking at this point before we destroy this beautiful planet and ourselves. So there's a lot of speculation. We don't know the answers. At the same time, I am MUFON's Director of Experiencer Research.
Oh, right.
And we receive many, many reports from people who are having highly negative encounters. And we're beginning to wonder what all of this is about. It seems to run the spectrum from people who have highly positive encounters to people who have highly negative encounters, and then a lot in the middle. And those individuals who have encounters that are sort of in the middle might be terribly frightened at first, but might eventually come to realize that it wasn't as terrible as they thought. But since these ETs have erased their memories, they haven't been able to remember the communication part about how they have been in contact throughout their lifetime, about how they consider these humans to be part of their family, how there is a spiritual connection. Whereas on that highly negative end, we see almost a demonic side. And it makes me wonder if this is simply a negative spiritual attachment rather than extraterrestrials who are doing this. But perhaps a vortex has been opened, or a portal has been opened into that person's home, and perhaps these highly negative entities are coming through this portal too, if it isn't closed up, or if these extraterrestrial beings are entering through the same portal. Maybe they're coming through like flies would come through an open door, or mosquitoes would come through an open door. I don't know. Again, that is all speculation, but we're working on this, and we have been speculating. We've been talking to physicists about this possibility as well, because we know that 99% of the atom is 99.9 is empty space. And
Right.
if we line up frequency and we line up phase, then physical matter can interpenetrate. And we know that individuals are taken through solid surfaces, usually through a window, and a closed window in their home, but sometimes through a roof or a wall, or even through the roof of a car. So, we have many, many questions. I wish we had the answers, but that's the reason that we keep searching for the answers.
It's so interesting what you're saying. OMG, it really is. Yeah, absolutely. When you look at Travis Walton, initially a very negative case, now he'll tell you what an amazing, brilliant spiritual experience it was, and how that probably they actually saved his life, in a sense.
Yes.
Right? Now, if there is not multi-dimensional. Well, yes, multi-dimensional species visiting us, all sorts of species, even those us from the future visiting us ourselves as well to improve ourselves, right? You've got all these multitude of potentials visiting. So therefore, when you look at the interdimensional sense, potentially, what if where our soul travels on to, there's some sort of gateway back to that, back and forth for other beings that we of matter and energy that we do not understand, as conscious as what we are right now, or even more, on missions coming back. Could it be seen as negative by some people? I suppose it could be, couldn't it? It's out of our reference or even our comprehension of framework at this moment of time right now, isn't it?
It is, and we do have some individuals who report that they are taunted on a nightly basis, that they're held upside down by their ankles, that they have scratches, deep scratches on their backs, their arms, their faces, their torsos. This is demonic. This is negative entity behavior. This is not benevolent, spiritual extraterrestrials. So there seems to be this other thing that is happening.
Yes.
From what I have discovered, either it seems to run in families, generationally, just like ET contact. But in this case, there might be a family history of having been in the mafia or having murdered individuals or being very unkind. It also seems to occur in cases where individuals have abused alcohol and drugs, and this kind of attachment has occurred. So and many people are confused by this, and they think it's all the same,
yes,
but it's not.
No, it's not. So maybe some of the reports you're getting through are actually not in the realm of the ufology realm in the sense, but in the realm of something else. And
that is correct.
There's people's misunderstanding, calling it one thing when actually it's something completely different. It sounds to me, as probably you might agree as well, that's some sort of attachment on people, not as you have said, some benevolent UFO or alien race in a sense.
That is correct.
Yeah. I would say that most hauntings that take place that are negative like that, if that is a haunting we're discussing here and the two have got crossed over, from my channeling and information that I've brought through, that hauntings take place or attachments take place like that where the person is actually having a direct connection with the past life aspect of themselves. And it's that past life aspect which recognizes the current incarnation, and then there's a joining them, and it's trying to get through. So it's two souls, halves, meeting each other in the same space. It's not something separate in a sense that's some demonic thing that passed away years ago that's nothing connected with the person in the same house. They're connected on a soul level, and that's why they magnetize to each other.
That is very interesting. That's something that I will definitely consider.
Well, actually, that's in my new book I'm writing, actually, that I brought through. Now, it's kind of out there, that idea, but that's what I channeled through a few weeks ago, and it was just a very interesting chapter. I'd never heard of it like that. But, when there may be something there, I don't know. So, yes, it could be a number of things that are happening in some of the cases that come to you, and it's very difficult. You've got to use very good discernment to really see that fine line, haven't you, sometimes?
Yes, you absolutely do. We know that they are different, that the characteristics are different, but there's a little bit of overlap. I say think of it as two bubbles coming together and touching in the middle. There's a little bit there that is the same or similar, but they're very different as well.
Absolutely. So just going back to Betty and Betty's story as well, did they go through the regression? When they came out of the regression, did they feel that they made it all up?
No, absolutely not. Betty and Barney were convinced that they were remembering true memories. You have to remember that there was 2 hours of missing time. These memories filled in the gap. They were hypnotized separately, and Dr. Simon reinstated amnesia at the end of each session. Betty and Barney could not compare notes. They couldn't even remember what they said to Dr. Simon. In the end, they told the same story from their own perspectives. So I am convinced that this was real. I did a comparative analysis of their statements under hypnosis, and that is in my book, Captured: The Betty and Barney Hill UFO Experience. And in that comparative analysis, I have lined up Betty's statements and Barney's statements throughout their journey that day, to compare them, to compare their speech quality, their descriptive details, and Betty and Barney told essentially the same story. There was no foundation for that, except for some dreams that Betty had. But there was a great deal of information that was not in Betty's dreams.
No, absolutely not. And this amazing side of this story as well, where they were able to go back to that incident. These were, again, as I've stated, these were quite benevolent, friendly beings, right?
Yes.
Yep.
They were. They frightened Betty and Barney terribly. Nobody knew about alien encounters at that time. Certainly, Betty and Barney didn't. They didn't know if they were going to be kidnapped and carried off to some distant planet, if they were going to survive this. So naturally, they were terrified. But eventually, they overcame their fear when they were on the craft, and they were reassured over and over again that they would not be harmed, that there were just a few simple experiments that had to be done, and that they would be released unharmed. And they were.
Yeah. I mean, the technology that they would have been surrounded by would have been out of this world. I mean,
absolutely.
God, I mean, what did they describe any of the apparatus? Just little things that were just like, wow, that's amazing, or that's really like, I've never heard of that before.
Well, certainly when Betty asked about where they came from, he showed her a star map that was like a hologram. And we didn't have that back in 1961, as far as I know. She was certainly not aware of that. Also, the needle that was inserted into her navel sounds very much like a laparoscopy or a amniocentesis. She had no knowledge of that back in that at that time frame. The ability to fly a circular craft, Barney described it as looking like a huge pancake, silently, to move it so efficiently, for it to hover without making any sound. It didn't have any rotors. It didn't appear to have any engines. And they were taken into these sterile rooms. The mind control that was used with Betty and Barney, we knew nothing about that at that time. No. There were so many things that must have been very, very shocking to Betty and Barney as they remembered all of this, and even in the conscious continuous recall that they had. And they had conscious continuous recall up to the point where Barney had observed the UFO from the field. He had observed the non-humans on board the craft. He was afraid he was going to be captured. He fled back to the car. He told Betty to roll down the window to see if she could see the craft because it had shifted overhead. She rolled down the window. She was looking for lights. All she saw was blackness, so she thought it was gone. We've later realized that she was looking at the underside of that craft. She then, and Barney then, heard a series of code-like buzzing sounds. The sounds caused the car to vibrate and caused for a tingling sensation to pass through their bodies. That was the beginning of that 2-hour period of missing time.
You know, you were very close with Betty and Barney. Yes. And of course, Betty until she passed away from cancer, which was very sad. You knew that you knew these people. So for anyone watching this, and for future people watching this, when they're saying, "Well, it can't be true," they must have thought they saw this. It can't be true. You knew this lady so very well. Her truth was her truth, wasn't it? You can't take that away.
That is, it was absolutely their truth. There was physical evidence. The tops of Barney's dress shoes were so deeply scraped that he had to buy new shoes. The dress that Betty was wearing that night was in fine condition when she put it on. When she returned home, there was a 2-inch zipper tear in the stitching. There was a 1-inch tear in the thick zipper fabric. The hem was torn down on one side. The lining of the dress was torn from waist to hemline. Later, a pink powdery substance grew on that dress and degraded the fabric of that dress. It's been analyzed in 6 different scientific laboratories. Part of that analysis is in my book. There was so much evidence. Their watches stopped and never ran again. There was a magnetic field around the trunk of their vehicle and shiny spots that had not been there the day before. There was a lot of physical evidence in this case for people who are looking for physical evidence. And Betty and Barney were honest, credible, psychologically healthy individuals until Barney suffered shock and trauma as a result of his unconscious memories and his conscious recall of observing these non-human entities and fearing that he was going to be captured.
Absolutely. Thank you for putting it like that. That's so very powerful, and you know, I can feel the truth resonating from you when you do that. So, you know, I mean, these are culture shocking scenario of truth that we're talking about. They really are. I mean, it's for people to accept this, it really does shatter their paradigm. Some people aren't ready for it. You know, you could speak as much truth as you want, yet there's mentally they're not prepared for that reality.
That is true. Yes, that is absolutely true.
You know, and again, you know, people always say to me, well, why do they not just show themselves en masse? And my answer to that, I don't know what you feel about this, but I hope we're not covering all topics here, but is that consciously, it wouldn't be, if you're spiritually evolved, it wouldn't be the right thing to do that to the masses. It just really would not be, because you're taking away people's truths, and then you're saying, you would be looked upon as a god. We need to get to that level first, so that we're on some more of an equal setting consciously and technology-wise.
Yes, and many human beings would consider it an invasion. They would think that we were going to be killed or taken over and enslaved. The military would probably fight back, and it could be disastrous for mankind. If they are spiritually involved, then they certainly would not want to do that to us.
No, absolutely. See, there you go. Absolutely, that's a good point. But then you look at the Hollywood movies, Independence Day 2 coming out soon, right? And you think, well, there's a bit of an agenda there sometimes, isn't there, to push all these kind of movies? Yeah, they're great movies. I love them as well. But, there's a lot of money to make movies like that. And it's like, well, is that just, kind of putting us off talking about it and thinking about it and, just showing us the worst that could happen? It makes you think, doesn't it, sometimes? Because the governments of the world, the governments
and horror movies sell.
Yeah, exactly. Fear sells, exactly, yeah. And this is not you would not say, please tell me your opinion, this is not just a US government cover-up, this is a worldwide government cover-up.
It is a worldwide government cover-up. Some countries are a little more open than others. When I have traveled internationally and spoken to individuals from other countries, they always blame the United States. They always say it's the U.S. military that is preventing us from coming forward and revealing the truth. I don't know if that is true, but that is what individuals from other countries are telling me.
I don't think so. I think no, I think it's bigger than that. I think it's bigger than that. I do, for it to have to be kept this long. Was the government of the time interested in their case?
The government was very interested, I have to say, but they also engaged in a cover-up. If you look at the original Project Blue Book report on their case, there was immediate interest in what occurred. But then the decision was made not to investigate further, except for by individual officers from Pease Air Force Base in Newington, New Hampshire. They had an interest in it. There was, from Project Blue Book headquarters, a cover-up They said it was the planet Venus, or Jupiter, sorry, the planet Jupiter. They said that there was an atmospheric inversion that night. I have the evidence. There was not. Certainly an atmospheric inversion wouldn't make a UFO hovering 100 feet overhead difficult to differentiate from a distant star, as is said. I can tell you that when this story went public, and it went public as the result of a violation of confidentiality, but when it went public, their file went to the Pentagon. I have that evidence. There was government interest.
Isn't that so interesting? Right, okay. Well, yes, because, I mean, you look at some of these famous cases, I bet they all tie into them somewhere. You know, this was probably this. It sounds like, I don't know if you've covered this before, the same species that were involved with Roswell, maybe.
It could very well be. The descriptive details are very similar, as well as the descriptive details of the small beings in the Walton case. I don't know if they're different races of grays or if it's individual descriptions, and we know that when different individuals describe things, they might be very similar. They might have seen the same thing, but they might be a little bit different as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Where is the star map now?
All of the materials, the star map, Betty's dress, all of the files are in an archival collection at the University of New Hampshire. And in terms of star map research, back in the early, maybe about 10 or 12 years ago, I can't remember the exact date, but an astrophysicist did another analysis of the star map. It was a computer model, this time a lot easier to do, and you can find that on YouTube today. It's about 90% accurate, I believe.
Wow. I mean, so how could she have known that? You know, where does that, that information doesn't just download to yourself. Do you know what I mean? It's,
That's right.
Yeah. Incredible. Yes. Incredible. So you mentioned that University of New Hampshire holds the files. But is that on display, or is that in some sort of vault somewhere?
It is in an archival collection. It was originally, part of it was on display. I think it's brought out from time to time. But any researcher who would like to go there can contact the University of New Hampshire Milne Archival Collection and make an appointment to go view the archival collection. It's at the library, the Diamond Library at the University of New Hampshire.
Right, okay, it's based there, yeah, okay. Well, that's just incredible, isn't it? Oh my gosh, imagine going to see that. That would be so fascinating.
And the state of New Hampshire has erected a historical marker in North Conway, New Hampshire, and not Conway, in North Lincoln, New Hampshire, in front of the Indian Head Resort to commemorate Betty's and Barney's experience as well.
Oh, isn't that amazing? They've done that. Wow. That says a lot, doesn't it?
Yes. That speaks a lot of their credibility, their integrity, and the importance of this case.
How had it changed them as people, towards the end of their lives, in a sense, into the nature of consciousness? Maybe if they ever spoke about the nature of the universe, the nature of life, in a sense.
Well, Barney tragically died at the age of 46 in 1969.
Wow, that's young.
It was very, very young. He had a cerebral hemorrhage. And so he really didn't have time to reflect upon his experience at that time. They had agreed to permit John Fuller to write the first book about their hypnosis in 1966. So this was only less than 3 years later. In terms of Betty, we asked her, I took care of her when she was terminally ill with cancer. and she had hospice care too. And we would ask her to reflect upon her life. And she thought this was a great experience, that she had the opportunity to meet astronauts from another planet. I don't think that she grew spiritually from it, but she was always a spiritual individual. She always believed in the goodness of humanity and in helping mankind in many, many ways. And she felt that she wanted to be remembered as a social worker, and for the work that she did in the civil rights movement, and for the good work that she did in her community. She thought that her experience with the UFO was secondary to all of that. She is generally remembered because of this UFO experience, but that was her wish.
Okay.
But she did not view it as a terrible event. She felt that she was privileged to have this experience.
Incredible. Okay, that's beautiful, that is. And gosh, you're quite busy as well right now. There's a lot of ongoing research, isn't there?
Yes, there is a great deal of ongoing research that I am doing into this, as well as others. This is my latest book. It is the Alien Abduction Files.
Wow, we didn't even get to that book, did we?
No, we didn't. With Denise Stoner. It's 6 cases of alien abduction and ET contact that I have investigated. It includes messages from extraterrestrials. It includes insight from experiencers today, and it includes speculation by a number of different individuals who have offered opinions on all of this, as well as myself.
Look, Kathleen, we've got to get you back on for that book. We really have. We will do. We'll get you back on. I'm sorry that we didn't even touch that book. Just to let you know, your books have been coming on the screen along with your website and other information. But yeah, I've got to get you back on because we've barely scratched the surface. But I've always wanted to cover the Betty and Barney Hill UFO experience, and I've got a chance to do it now. And I just want to thank you for documenting this for future generations. You've done an amazing job, and it's
thank you.
It needed doing.
It absolutely did. The full story needed to be told. The first book told a very tiny bit of that story. And so that is what I attempted to accomplish when I wrote Captured, the Betty and Barney Hill UFO experience.
What would you say then? Maybe you've said it already, but I'll ask you, what would you say is the most important message of your work?
The most important message, I believe, is that we are indeed being visited by beings from probably other planets and other dimensions, and perhaps from the future, who are very concerned about our planet. I do not believe that they are malevolent. I think that's something entirely different, having to do with spiritual entities. I do believe that if they wanted to interfere with our lives on a large scale, if they wanted to take over this planet, they would have done that a very, very long time ago. I think that they are watching us, that they are nurturing us, that we are a young civilization, and that they are a much older civilization than we are.
Well, Kathleen Marden, I just can't wait to get you back on. I know it's been so very short, it's gone so quickly, but yes. I appreciate you giving us this time this morning for this interview. And, this has been one of my favorites most recently, definitely. So thank you very, very much.
You're welcome, and it was a pleasure to be with you today. Thanks for having me.
Well, we've come to an end on tonight's show. Don't forget that you can listen and watch all our past interviews on the More Show's official YouTube channel. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new daily shows. You may also find out more on all past and upcoming guests on the show via themoreshow.com, or do like us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates. So until next time, Be safe.